Let's make the most amazing, incredibly soft, big bubble focaccia. It's a no-knead dough and requires only 5 simple ingredients. If you're not familiar with focaccia, as an Italian, the best way I can describe it to you, it's almost as if bread and pizza had a baby. You'll be blown away by how delicious this is and by how easy it is to make. E per tutti gli italiani che mi seguono, questa è la focaccia più alta, soffice e più buona del mondo. To a large bowl, add warm water, salt, olive oil, and yeast. You want to give these ingredients a good whisk. We want to dissolve the salt thoroughly in the water. Now let's talk flour. I usually use all-purpose flour for my breads. It's convenient as it's the one I usually have on hand. However, for this recipe, you do want to use a high-protein bread flour. You want to aim for a flour that has at least 12% protein content. This type of flour will give lots of structure to your dough and allows the dough to support bigger bubbles as it proofs and bakes. If you want to take this a step further, you can decide how finely ground you want your flour to be. I prefer 0-0 flour, even though it's not the healthiest choice. Damn, does it make good bread and pizza. My mom, on the other hand, opts for something like this, which is type 1. It's a less refined flour and will give you a darker and more robustly flavored focaccia. Both flours have 12% protein content. Now, this dough is a high hydration dough. While this may sound complicated and fancy, in really simple terms, it just means it's going to be hell if you try to knead this dough. It is wet, it is sticky, there is no way you can knead this dough. So I'm going to show you the good old stretch and fold technique. It is my favorite way to make bread. Scrape down the sides of the bowl, cover the bowl, and come back in half an hour. After 30 minutes, you're going to wet your hands. The water will just prevent the dough from sticking to your hands. You're going to perform your first series of stretch and folds. We're going to do 4 series in total. Take one side of the dough, lift and stretch, and fold the dough, bringing it to the opposite side of the bowl. Rotate the bowl 1/4 and repeat this process. This method helps the dough start to develop gluten and eventually start to form those amazing bubbles that are so characteristic of focaccia. You want to do 4 folds per session, cover the bowl again, and come back in 30 minutes and do the next series of stretch and folds. Now, I know some people may think this is time consuming, but it's only 5 minutes of hands-on time. The rest of the time, the dough is just hanging out. As you continue to perform the stretch and folds, you'll notice the texture of the dough will gradually change from very loose to a well-formed but soft dough. Again, you want to do about 4 folds per series, maybe 5. She'll tell you when it's enough. The dough will start to pull back and not stretch anymore. At that point, you're going to cover the bowl again and come back in 30 minutes and do your third series of stretch and folds. You want to do at least 4 series in total, so the entire process should take about 2 hours, but only 5 minutes of hands-on time. I say about 2 hours because you really want to pay attention to your dough. Is it supple? Is she a bubbler? Does it need an extra series of folds? Visuals are key when making bread. Now, after your last series of folds, you have 2 options. You can either cover the dough and pop it in the fridge overnight, which I do recommend for beginner bread makers, or you can set this to the side one last time for 30 minutes and make focaccia the same day. So cover the bowl well and set it to the side for half an hour or pop it in the fridge overnight. This is how the dough is going to look. It is going to jiggle. Every time I make focaccia, I am so tempted to pop those bubbles. Do not pop the bubbles. I know the urge. You're going to generously grease the tray with about 3 tablespoons of olive oil. I know this may seem like a lot of olive oil, but I'm telling you, focaccia needs it. If you're gonna make focaccia, you gotta do it the right way. If your tray is not non-stick, you might want to add parchment paper or the focaccia will stick to your tray. Regardless if you add parchment paper or not, you will still have to add that amount of olive oil. Focaccia craves olive oil. You're going to do one last series of folds, this time being extra gentle. We want to maintain as many air bubbles as we can. Put the dough into the greased pan, drizzle some olive oil on top, and you're going to hate me for saying this, but yes, this does need to rise again for about 1 hour. Focaccia making is an art, but I promise you it is worth the wait. Drizzle the dough with more olive oil, yes again, oil your hands as well, and start to dimple. You first want to dimple, so dimple, 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 and then you want to jiggle, jiggle, jiggle. I cannot tell you how satisfying this is. When I was little and my mom would make focaccia, this was my job right here. I was the dimple maker. It is so much fun. You can add whatever toppings you like. I'm adding olives and rosemary today. You want to oil the toppings or they'll burn. And at this point, you also want to preheat the oven to 400 degrees Fahrenheit or 200 degrees Celsius. Ideally, you do want to use a ventilated oven. oven. I'm aware not everyone has it, but if you do want to switch on the fan. Bake the focaccia for about 20 to 22 minutes. As soon as this comes out of the oven, carefully take it out of the pan and allow it to cool for at least 10 minutes before slicing into it. The crust will be crunchy and the inside will be the softest and most delicious thing in the entire world. Focaccia is extremely dangerous. I could eat this entire thing in one sitting. No joke. I've done that many times before. Now allow me to show you how to make one of the best mouth-watering focaccia sandwiches you'll ever have. Split that baby in half, take out the creme if you wish, add prosciutto, and add fresh mozzarella di bufala. That's it! You don't need any condiments. When you have good quality ingredients, you don't need any condiments whatsoever. Soft and fluffy focaccia, prosciutto, mozzarella. A lot of times when I find myself scrolling on Instagram and an Italian will make a panino or, in English, a sandwich, the amount of times, I see comments of people saying, oh, there's no condiments, that looks dry. Honey, it does not get any more juicy than this. So, forget the condiments and make this. If you like breads, if you like genuine, delicious comfort food, pre-order my cookbook to make sure you get your copy.